Basketball fans, on today's show, we're talking all things James Harden. So before I get into the show, I want to know where you think he will end the 2021 season. Will it be with Houston? Could it be with Brooklyn? Or could it be with one of the teams we're going to talk about on today's show? Go ahead and before we get started, let me know in the comments section. Now, again, we're focusing on the former MVP himself, James Harden of the Houston Rockets, because his list of preferred destinations has officially grown to 4 teams. Now, originally, we did know about the Philadelphia 76ers and the Brooklyn Nets. Those were 2 teams that have long been stated to have connections to James Harden. And now here he is, and he's got more teams on the list. Look, he hasn't practiced yet because he has to pass 6 COVID tests before he's allowed to be in training camp. That hasn't happened yet. And he's also only said one single word to his brand new head coach in Stephen Silas. That one word was hello. That is all they have said. So it's not looking good for James Harden and the Houston Rockets relationship. So he said, hey, you know what? I'll add a couple teams to my list. So, of course, as I mentioned, he had the Brooklyn Nets and he had the Philadelphia 76ers with Daryl Morey already on board in Philadelphia. We knew that those 2 were potential targets for him, or were at least potential destinations for him. The other 2, Milwaukee and Miami, those are brand new as of Thursday morning. The Milwaukee Bucks, of course, with Giannis Antetokounmpo. Miami Heat, of course, with Jimmy Butler. 2 teams that could look to make big splashes, and we'll get into how they could potentially make that happen here in just a moment. But before I give you my realistic trade scenarios for James Harden, I want you to let me know who you think would be the best team if they added James Harden before the season got going. I asked you at the top of the show where you think he'll end up. Now tell me which team you think would improve the most or be the best with the addition of Harden in the comments section. Let's get to my first team, the Brooklyn Nets, the team that obviously has been associated with him the longest, the team that with Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, they have continuously been there, and they're still on his list. But a newer report came out, and the Houston Rockets reportedly want no part of a Brooklyn Nets trade unless it involves Kyrie Irving or Kevin Durant. Yeah, right. Good luck, Houston. At the end of the day, they're probably going to have to give in to a lesser trade. And so I think the Nets, this is just my opinion here, I think the Nets should hold out as long as possible until the Rockets are finally broken down enough to where they don't get the offers they want. And they have to accept something like this, which, by the way, is not a bad trade scenario. But this is a realistic deal that I've seen floated around out there. Karis LeVert, of course. Spencer Dinwiddie, of course. Jared Allen, and newly acquired Landry Shamet, plus 3 first-round picks. And I know it seems like a lot, but when you really break it down, James Harden's ceiling, and already has proven that he is an MVP. But then when you look at guys like LeVert, Dinwiddie, Allen, and Shamet, what's their ceiling? Is it even an all-star? Maybe LeVert is borderline all-star at his very top of his ceiling, but if you're trading for an MVP, you're going to have to give up first-round picks, especially for a guy like James Harden. And so I know it seems like a lot. You're giving up a lot of young assets, but when you're going for basically the rental that may be, or maybe it's a long-term play with James Harden, Kevin Durant, and Kyrie Irving, who do you think says no? Does Brooklyn say no because they don't want to give up those young guys, or do the Rockets say no because they're going to hold out longer for Kyrie and KD? Let me know in the comments section. But let's look at this Nets team and what a revamped starting 5 would look like for them. I mean, they're already good enough, right? Like, if James Harden doesn't get traded there and, you know, they keep Jared Allen and Karis LeVert in the lineup, like, Allen's better than DeAndre Jordan at this point in his career. And Karis LeVert is a really solid player as well. In fact, like I said, I think his ceiling is borderline all-star. But you throw James Harden in there, you've got 2 MVP-level players with one of the top 5 point guards in the NBA in Kyrie Irving, and arguably the best shooter in the NBA in Joe Harris. It's a pretty darn good lineup for the Nets. It might be worth it to give up all those young assets. Now, the next team on the list, and this one has been pretty constant as well since Daryl Morey stepped in, the Philadelphia 76ers. Now, if it's not Joel Embiid, which it shouldn't be, it's going to be Ben Simmons that's included in this deal. And obviously, Ben Simmons, I don't have him on the same level of Kyrie and KD, but he's close enough. But he's also younger than both of those guys. And so I think a Ben Simmons would have to be included in a deal for James Harden. And I'm going to give you my potential trade here in just a moment. But before we get there, I want to tell you about the new City Edition gear available at Fanatics at chatsports.com/NBA City. And you see this James Harden jersey? I know it's available right now. But let's say he gets traded. You bought this jersey. Well, then you got to go get a new jersey. Guess what Fanatics will do for you? They'll hook you up with a brand new one for free with jersey insurance at chatsports.com/NBA City. But it's not just jerseys. They got hoodies, they got hats, they've got backpacks, they've got jackets, and they've got slides as well if you need some new slippers for your feet going into Christmas time. All available at this link right here, chatsports.com/NBA City. Get the NBA lover of gift in your life. Get it today while you still can and while that link is still available. I'll put it in the comments. I'll put it in the description as well. Go check them out. When you click on that link, it helps us out and helps out our friends over at Fanatics. Now, my realistic trade scenario here is Ben Simmons, Matisse Thybulle, Furkan Korkmaz, who's a great shooter but hasn't really proven himself quite yet, Mike Scott to make the money work, and no Mike Scott, not of Dunder Mifflin, different Mike Scott there. And then the Sixers don't have the same draft capital that the Nets have to offer, so I've got them trading their 2021 first-round pick and then 2 second-round picks, one of which is actually from Atlanta, so it'll be, potentially a borderline first, although the Hawks could be a little bit better this year. And then, of course, James Harden going over to the 76ers. And I think you give up less draft capital if you're the Sixers here because you put in Ben Simmons, who's a better player than anybody the Nets had to offer. And now your big two in Philly could be Harden and Embiid. And in all honesty, that is a way better pairing. I mean, infinitely better pairing than Simmons and Embiid because Harden can shoot. He can stretch the floor, and Embiid can play defense down low if somebody blows past James Harden. I mean, if I'm Philadelphia, I'm pulling this trade offer. I'm doing it right away. I know Matisse Thybulle is a nice piece. I know Ben Simmons is still the great defender that he is, but if you get a chance to revamp your team with Harden and Embiid, I think you got to do it. Now, whenever James Harden gets traded, because at this point, it's bound to happen. I don't think he's staying in Houston at any time. I'm going to go live for it. So you're going to want to tune in as soon as you can by turning on your notifications and subscribing to the channel. You can see the link right here, youtube.com/chatsportstv, or just scroll on down and hit the big red button. They make it really easy for you. And then after you hit that red button, click on the notification bell. It looks like this right here. All you got to do is click it and subscribe today. Now, one of the new teams added to his list, the Milwaukee Bucks. And listen, I just don't think the Bucks are a realistic trade destination for Harden because they don't have the draft capital that some of these other teams do. Obviously, they pulled off a trade for Jrue Holiday, but when they did that, it gave up a lot of what they had to offer in draft scenarios when they got Jrue Holiday, So going and getting a guy like James Harden is going to become a little bit more tough. They also really don't have that many great players under contract outside of Holiday, Giannis, but then they do have Chris Middleton, and I'll talk about him here in just a moment. But if you had to choose one guy, because there are some James Harden truthers out there, if you're building around a team right now, if you want one of these two guys, who's it going to be? Type GA for Giannis Antetokounmpo, type JH for James Harden. I'm typing GA all day, every day. Better defender. I think he's a better overall player right now. He's just not as good of a shooter. But you know what? If he scores 90% of the shots he takes around the rim, I'll take Giannis. But here's the realistic trade I got for you. And I say realistic. In fact, I think this one is completely unrealistic. I don't think he's going to Milwaukee unless a third or a fourth team gets involved. But you give up Chris Middleton because he's the other all-star on that team because you can't trade Jrue Holiday right now. You give up Dante DiVincenzo because he's probably your best young asset that you have that's not named Giannis. And then you give up DJ Wilson to kind of make the money work, but also, hey, he's a decent young piece. And you just drafted Jordan Nora in the second round, which means you can still trade him. The problem for the Bucks is that, like I said, they don't have those draft picks to offer, so the only thing they can offer are these 3 first-round picks that I just threw in there for at least some sort of draft capital. At the end of the day, it's just not going to get it done. But it'd be fun to watch. And now you throw James Harden in the same backcourt as Jrue Holiday. That is an elite defender with not a great defender, but an awesome offensive option. You probably start Torrey Craig at this point because at the forward position, now that Dante DiVincenzo is gone and Middleton's gone, you don't have a lot of options. And then Brook Lopez and Giannis. If this doesn't win you a championship, I don't know what will. And if this isn't keeping Giannis happy as a player, I don't know what will either. But let's not forget the fact that Giannis and James Harden have quite the long-standing rivalry as MVP candidates. So that might be one factor to watch out for in a potential Bucks and Rockets deal. The last team and the most recently added team to his list, the Miami Heat. And we know Pat Riley, we know Eric Spoelstra. They're ready to chase the big stars in Miami. They're ready to go out and get whoever they can. In all honesty, they have young assets to make this thing to work. They have Tyler Hero, they have Duncan Robinson, they have Bam Adebayo as well. Even Kendrick Nunn you could throw in there as a young asset. But the only thing I have, and this kind of ties back to Milwaukee as well, would Miami be willing to give up 2021 cap space to go get James Harden this year if they know they have a legit shot at Giannis next year? I'm not 100% convinced they will. But if a trade looks something like this, I think it would make some sense. You throw in Tyler Hero and Duncan Robinson, 2 great young shooters. Duncan obviously being that more guard/forward position. Tyler Hero playing a lot of guard at either guard position. And honestly, he's a borderline all-star in the next few years, I would say. I would say give him a couple more years, he could be a borderline all-star. He's not there yet, but he's getting there. You throw in Iguodala to make the money work and Kelly Olynyk to make the money work. And then they do have some draft assets, but it's a little bit in advance. So you're basically trading for 2 high schoolers in the first round, 2025 first and a 2027 first round pick. if they don't want to give up Bam Adebayo, I think that's the most realistic scenario you have, and I don't think you should give up Bam Adebayo in a James Harden trade. If you want Harden, it's because you want to pair him next to Jimmy Butler and Bam, and if that happens, you've got, basically two guys that can give you 20 on any given night and another guy that can give you 30 on any given night, and all three of them pass well, and they all rebound well. I think this is a stacked big three. You get the defense in Butler and Bam Adebayo. You get the offense in James Harden. And you get just great leadership in Jimmy Butler as well. I would love to watch this team. It'd be a lot of fun. But at the end of the day, if they're not willing to give up Bam Adebayo, I can't see Houston actually working out in a deal. Now, I'm going to release my player rankings here pretty soon for next year. But I want to know where you guys think James Harden ranks in the NBA. Is he top 10? Is he top 5? Is he even in the top 10 for you? Let me know in the comment section. I appreciate you guys watching this video, so go ahead and give it a like. Make sure to subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and I'll see you next time.